thanks to the City of Brimbank across our neighbourhood and the world, Soul Dive with AD, Roshani and Lydia on Brimbank Live on Live FM.
It's going to be a great show, ladies, and we want to get straight into it.
Let's do it.
I'd love to introduce, our very first guest. So John Marc is an educator, and he's about to give us the scoop on what it's been like.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us, John.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
How are
and
you?
thanks for waking up for us.
It's really early. I don't know if you guys talked about this, but it's so early right now.
But you're a teacher, right? What time do you usually have to wake up?
Yeah, earlier than this. So I'd usually be in the classroom by now, getting class ready.
Okay.
But I'm not.
You're in this classroom right now. So.
Yeah.
That's right. We're about to school. No, joking.
All right, John.
Yeah.
Let me ask you what your experience has been as an educator during this whole time.
During this whole time has been an interesting one. So usually I'm what's called a CRT, a casual relief teacher, or a substitute. And that's just kind of been as a choice, that's been my career for the last 5 years since I graduated from uni. But then this year, I got the opportunity to be a full-time teacher and take over a grade 1 classroom for the rest of the year. And that was a choice that I had to really think about and make whether or not I wanted to take this class. Considering the times, because I'm also a professional actor, so it supplements really well. But because of the times and the acting industry just kind of going to kaput, I made the choice to become a full-time teacher. Working as a CRT in COVID was really tricky. There weren't many jobs because teachers could now work from home. So even if they were sick, they were still able to teach. And then a lot of schools just weren't hiring CRTs anymore. So I'm really grateful that I've got a job. But with that comes it's trials and tribulations. It's pretty tricky trying to teach 22 young people online, especially at that age where they're in their development and they need a lot of support. So it can get quite tricky. Some kids are flying, some kids are really struggling, and it's hard to kind of cater to them. To each and every one and reach out. And then you've got kids with different internet problems and that sort of thing as well. So it's pretty tricky. We make do, we do what we can, but I'm not gonna lie, it's not the easiest thing in the world. We'd much rather be in the classroom, I think.
And you're right about the whole learning styles and different kids finding it tougher than others, because I know personally I can't do online learning. I really struggle with online learning. I need to be in a classroom being told what to do, in a structured setting, and then I leave and then, it's done for me. So that blurred line situation would make it really difficult for kids that just get to roll out of bed and are supposed to sit in front of their computer.
Absolutely. And it's tricky as well, because in a classroom environment, I can control the setting, I can control the distractions in the room, whereas at home, they're surrounded by iPads and PlayStations and toys and their brothers and their cats and their dogs just running in, and it gets hectic.
Wow, can imagine.
But so you do what you can, but it's not the easiest. That's for sure.
And I also heard about some funding cuts to teaching, and I thought it'd be really interesting mentioning it, since Lydia had said that you were an acting teacher. So I know in the creative space and in the art space, there's been a lot of funding cuts coming from the government. Do you feel like that's impacted you in any way, or has it changed anything, or will it change anything?
In both sectors, or in education particularly?
Probably in education as a whole, but I know in the art sector specifically, there's been huge cuts for some reason.
It's where as creatives and as artists, we're always hopeful, and we always, we do it tough for many reasons, but we're always hopeful of a brighter future and a government and a country that appreciates the arts. We're always hopeful for that, and thankful for any support that we do get. But then I think 2020 especially, and hearing all the funding cuts to the art sector really put a dampener on the mood, and you couldn't help but feel that in the art sector.
Yeah.
It's now, a lot less funding, which means there's a lot less grants, which means everyone's fighting for the same money, and it means more people are losing out. Less people are getting money. It's a struggle. It's in an industry that you rarely recoup what you pay. It's
right.
Yeah, it's a tough one. As for the education sector, it's a massive flow-on effect. I don't understand. I don't understand the reasoning behind.
It's the most important sector, like in the world, education.
Yeah, even through this period.
Funding the foundations and funding the ground roots of education in young people I just don't understand why you would, especially the public sector, where, so there's funding cuts to the public sector, yet a lot of the private sector is untouched, and that doesn't make sense to me where they have the money. So, I think in my personal experience of it, and we'll definitely feel the effects of it more and more as the years go by, it's going to be a roll-on effect. But right now, immediately, during COVID, the hardest part is because you've got students that have to go to school. They, whether their parents are essential workers or whatever reason, they have to go to school. And the teachers aren't expected to be at school. But if the school doesn't have funding for CRTs or for anyone else, then it's a tricky situation. So as a CRT, that was one thing that I noticed and was quite apparent, really.
When you say the teachers aren't expected to be at school, is it up to their own willingness or
I think a lot of schools are doing it differently. But they kind of, they do what they can. We at my school, teachers volunteer to come to school.
Okay.
But then to take care of the kids at the on site. But you volunteer to come to school, but who wants to go out in a pandemic?
Exactly.
Honestly.
And so, especially if they've got health problems themselves. So
absolutely,
you're totally right. You're listening to Soul Dive with Roshani, AD, and Lydia, and we are speaking to the wonderful educator John Marc. So let's pick this up a little. It's getting a bit down. It's getting a bit sad. So let's talk about some positives. What are some positive things that have come out of this? There's surely some silver linings out there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like I'm teaching 6 and 7 year olds, and for me as an educator, it's and as a creative, it's fun to adapt and try to find different ways to do it and bring some positivity to it. And my kids have really taken that on, and it's great to see their smiles and see the resilience in the young people as well. Like it's they still rock up every morning. They still get their work done. They got smiles on their faces. We have a laugh. And the parents, yesterday was a full day of parent-teacher interviews, and it was just like, the parents were, wanting to get back in the classroom, but just really appreciative what we're doing and how well we're doing it.
Yeah. Oh, that's
beautiful.
Nice.
Beautiful. Yeah. So I'm going to throw this next section to Lydia. We have a Mythbusters myth conception type part of our show. So Lydia, let's throw out a myth.
So this one's about teachers, John Marc. The myth that I've chosen is teachers have the entire summer off work. True or false?
100%, yeah. And we get hands and we like...
We thought there'd be more resistance there.
What? Okay, when you say entire summer, do you mean like the full 3 months? Like,
as in like whatever the summer period is, free from work, free from responsibilities.
I think you've got to... So there's like a good kind of 6 weeks that like starts close to Christmas and then goes through to like most of January. And then, there's a good 6 weeks where we've got off, and that's the end of the year. But I think you've got to think about like at what point in their career is a teacher. If a teacher's got a lot of experience and has the resources already, then planning for the new year, planning their class might take less time. But if a teacher's new in their career, then they're out getting resources. They're trying to set up their classroom. They're constantly, we are constantly thinking about work.
Yeah. Okay. So your mind doesn't necessarily stop, even
Absolutely not. I think we like, and we get breaks at the end of each term. We get 2 weeks off, and we need it for one thing. Because it's a rough job. It's a lot.
It's heavy. Yeah.
It is heavy, and it's more so just the hours. But we need that time to replan and to regather and find out more about our students and do what we can do. Be ready to progress these students. So
yeah. For sure.
So we get a lot of time off, but you know what? I reckon we need more.
Yeah.
I mean,
anyone listening?
Yeah, you work for like a large chunk of the day as well, like when you are working. So I think it makes sense that you guys do get time off.
Yeah. And it's real that like we are constantly thinking about it. I'm constantly thinking about my students and how I can push and how I can move them and how I can make them grow. Because
it's not really a career where you can kind of detach from that environment or whatever it is when you're not in the space. Like you're genuinely, you care about the progression of these children, and so
That's right.
makes total sense.
And it ends up even being like the children's home life, not just necessarily, what they're learning at school.
Yeah.
And I think it's stressful. Like you're not even a parent, but you just become a parent, a vicarious parent.
For many children.
Well, for a lot of these kids, I'm the adult that they see, almost as much as their parents.
Exactly.
For some of them more than their parents. And it's, it's hard being a role model. You got to take that seriously. And, there's pressure there.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a fantastic job. John. So many J's, tongue twisters. And as always, I love finishing off our segments as well with what you're grateful for. Because it's really nice to just recognize that. So what are you grateful for at this very moment in time, John?
At this very moment in time, I'm grateful for my class. I think you've made me realize this as well. I'm grateful for my students and how resilient they are. I'm grateful that in this crazy time, even as an artist, I'm grateful that I do have some work. I realize that I acknowledge that I'm in a better position than some people. And that I think it's right at this time in the middle of a pandemic. It's important for me to acknowledge that I see those that are struggling and I hear you. But I'm grateful that I can eat. One thing, and I got a roof over my head. So
well said.
We commend
thank you so much.
Thank you for being a teacher. We need
Keep
very
up the
grateful.
good work.
Thank you.
Honestly.
Thanks for getting the word out, and thanks for supporting the arts and supporting the education sector.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we're all students in our own rights as well, and we're forever learning. But there's going to be more after the break. When we come back, we're speaking to some parents turned homeschool teachers and the new stresses that come along with that.
With thanks to the City of BRIMBANK across our neighbourhood and the world, Soul Dive with AD, Roshani and Lydia on BRIMBANK Live on Live FM.